Welcome to the Edge Television broadcast, Alexandra.
Well, thank you.
Well, it's good to have you on. And of course, you are the founder and publisher of Forbidden Knowledge TV. And, if there's one thing I like to talk about, and that's forbidden knowledge. And I want to know who the jokers are that feel they can keep knowledge from us, because I feel like if we don't know the truth, if we don't even seek the truth, we're already in a corral, and they're just and the controllers are outside of that. They're just telling us what to do. And yeah, they might throw a little something in the corral, maybe feed us a little bit, as long as we pay our taxes, pay our mortgage, do their bidding and vote the right way, everybody's happy. But you start looking outside there, you start looking to the realm of forbidden knowledge, where kind of remind me of a movie called The Village. Did you ever see that by M. Night Shyamalan? People
No, I didn't. But first of all, I couldn't agree more with everything you just said. That's 100% where I'm at. Absolutely. No, I didn't see The Village. I've heard great things about it, though.
Well, yeah, it reminds me of what we're talking about tonight, because this whole little town is inside this walled village, and they don't know. They think they're back in the 18th century, but somebody gets sick and they got to send somebody out. So they actually have to find out that there's a really cruel world out there, and they've been lied to. Their whole life's been a lie. But that's kind of the way it is now. Alexandra, welcome to the program. You're also author of 6 books. But before we get going, why don't you introduce yourself to our audience?
Well, I'm the founder of Forbidden Knowledge TV, which will have its 8th anniversary on October 1st. I put out a daily newsletter, and it's a website, forbiddenknowledgetv.net. It covers basically alternative everything, Mm-hmm. And I guess because of the times that we're in, it's become so much more about politics than it ever was previously. When I started, it was mostly about, kind of cool science and sort of suppressed science type of stuff. That's kind of where my books have been a lot. It's sort of, and also in, paranormal stuff. But, and I still do that, obviously, but it's just so much more political stuff because of, we're in an information war right now. It's a war. We're in a war, and it's going on in our living rooms, through our computers, and on our phones, and on TV.
Well, what's interesting about this, what you're talking about there, Alexandra, is I think according to what I read about you, in 2015, you had a revenue drop of about 90% from Google.
Right.
Now, all the news lately, I mean, the big one is, of course, Alex Jones. And, there's so many people celebrating, saying, well, he's a kook. He's a conspiracy theorist. And that's the first thing you want to do to your enemy, is label them as somebody who isn't likable, who doesn't, isn't part of the group, some outcast of some kind, some psycho, basically. And therefore, everybody says, hey, that sounds about right. He should be banned, but it's only a matter of time for they will tighten that parameter.
Absolutely.
And it'll get to you.
Now,
But it sounds like it started with you.
The most distressing part of all of this is to see all of these, I was, I'm from the North, where we're all, everything was totally super, super liberal, borderline socialist in my education. So I've always identified as a liberal, and I'm very appalled at what I'm seeing among so-called liberals right now. Mm-hmm. I'm absolutely astonished. I mean, and this is what I'm saying. This is a war. We're being divided, and it's terrifying. Mm-hmm. It's terrifying. And what I really think is going on with sort of these pundits that you see on Twitter, and writing for the Daily Beast, and these Vox, Vice, these and to say nothing, obviously, of the mainstream media, CNN, MSNBC, or MSLSD or DNC or whatever you want to call it. I think a lot of we're looking at Project Mockingbird, in the latest iteration. It's probably through Soros foundations. He just divested himself of $18 billion of his personal fortune into these he's got hundreds of nonprofit organizations that are all aimed at financing probably journalists like these people who write for Daily Beast and stuff. These people are not honest people. Mm-hmm. And it's terrifying because, and I think it's because it's kind of a false economy. The way things work on the internet, the internet kind of sucked a lot of all of the profitability of things have been sucked dry by just the digital revolution. When you could really quantify value the way, and cut costs because you could really see things in a way that you never had been able to before. What we have now is just like completely disintermediated media that's all being done online and cutting out. People can't get paid anymore. Like, for example, I was in the film business for years, and that's just an incredibly difficult business to be in nowadays. It already was difficult,
Mm-hmm.
But in a world where you have, like billions of hours of free content on YouTube, really, like how are you going to survive in the independent film world?
Mm-hmm. Well, what is terrifying is the social media giants. I don't know if they had their meeting or going to have one, but they're saying they're going to have some meeting how to what they call keep the election safe, which is ridiculous. What that means is if you don't agree with their specific political platform or their view of the world, then it's considered hate speech, and that's a code. That's code word for anybody who doesn't agree with them. It's a conversation ender. It's like calling somebody a racist. That is so automatic that if you say racist in any context, the other person's already guilty. Doesn't matter what they said or how they said it, and it doesn't matter what they say in the future.
It's terrifying for me as someone, as I said, who was, and most of my family are still in that bubble, and they don't really see what's going on. That this is, they're calling Trump the Nazi. These people are the Nazis. These censorship people, these Facebook people who are all basically, this is privatized surveillance. This was all the stuff that was unrolled. Started with W, and with the Patriot Act and stuff, but really like full blast with Obama, and that I think is finally getting reeled back in. And because this is the privatized part of this mass surveillance project. Are things like this? We're on Skype right now. This is it was recently purchased by Microsoft. And I don't know if you noticed, like the update is crappy.
Yep.
And
yeah, I got hit with that just for the show. I was thinking, oh crap, man, I got to call you, and I don't want this thing trying to upload or download some kind of crazy software trying to get you on the program. But the masters of the universe is what they're being called. But it's amazing that you go back into the 80s and 90s and you look at the science fiction movies projecting the future. They always had a future of some religious zealot taking over the world, and everybody hated him and they rebelled, and people wanted freedom, and the tech people were the ones that came to the rescue to clear the world out, to get it back free again. But that's not the way it is. The way it is now is the masters of the universe, the masters of social media, as you say. They tricked everybody into thinking, hey, it's just a great platform to communicate with friends and family. But instead, they use your personal information for marketing and for observation, and to actually change your vote or your outlook. And it does happen. Most people are actually self-censoring themselves because, one, I don't know how many people I know that's got banned from Facebook, at least temporarily, or Twitter, and then they come back. They're never really the same, even though they object, but they never put as much out as they did. As you know, it's called self-censoring. But I'm kind of sad myself because I haven't been banned so much, and I'm thinking, what's the problem, man? What, am I just not laying it out there, or what?
Well, I think you do see like people who are more strident are obviously, because a lot of it is machine stuff, and that's why it's so impersonal and weird. A robot is doing it a lot of the time.
An algorithm.
Maybe once in a while there'll be a human intervention that's actually doing it, but a lot of the time it's just sort of keywords and like I think is what's his name, the CEO of Twitter says, we're not censoring content, we're censoring behavior. And by behavior has a whole other definition in the realm of online communications. Behavior is it's maybe not only the tonality, but then the outcome and the impact and the response. And sometimes the more response you get, like when I started really getting censored, it's because I was getting 200 new subscribers per day, and that freaked that company out. That happened in 2011 when I wrote an article accompanied by a video by Jerry Day in Los Angeles about how to roll back smart meters and to not allow, legally prevent these people from installing smart meters on your house. I woke up one morning and my mass, like what the MailChimp, the equivalent of MailChimp, it's another company called AWeber, who I was using. They had deleted my account, and I called them, and it took all day, me calling back and being dissed by these people and accused of spamming, something I would never do. I was like, this is serious. This is how I make a living. I would never do that. I'm not going to, you don't poop where you eat, right? So, no, I would never do that. And she finally said, this was the crazy part. She said, one of our other clients is one of the top 3 largest ISPs in the world, internet service providers. And they threatened to block all of our traffic, meaning all of their other clients' traffic, if we did not delete your account immediately. And like that, you know what? My ears started ringing. Like, I think I almost had like a mini heart attack or something.
Wow.
I got like fibromyalgia for 6 months after that. It really freaked me out. I jumped out of my skin after that.
Well, I'll tell you something freaky. In the middle of the night, my flat screen TV, the standby button came on by itself. Now, obviously you're tech savvy. You've got a website going on there, a pretty nice one there, with really, really nice to view. You know that the only way anything can change is if there's code. Hardware does not change. Code changes hardware. It's what runs the hardware. Code was changed.
Right.
And I turned it off several times. And
are connected, and I think even that was revealed not too long ago in one of the Snowden drops, that some of these new smart TVs absolutely can spy on you. Especially the cheap ones. Like right now, I'm sort of even half considering buying a big old, because I don't have any TV. I've boycotted TV, but a part of me is sort of like, maybe I'd rather work on my website using a big old, 55-inch screen. And so you can buy them for $5,000, right? Or you can buy one for 500 or less, 400, if you allow all this spy stuff on there.
Yeah, and that reminds me, was at the early years of Obama's administration or before, I can't remember when, but remember they were buying back TVs. I thought that's weird. Well, now why is the government interested in getting people's old cathode ray TVs? Obviously because those aren't tech savvy and they can't use them to spy on people.
Right. Well, that was the whole switch over to digital, which I guess was in the early 2000s. When everything switched over.
Well, you said it right, Alexandra. There is a war going on. People, I hope, and I don't like, the sky's falling type of things, but I mean, there's the evidence. I think it's always been reserved. People's, it's like we've assumed forever that Washington D.C. had our best interests in mind. Well, that law doesn't sound particularly good, but these guys, they work every day. They work together. They're working for America's best interests. And next thing you know, we can't sell a car to China or Japan, or all of our factories have left the country, or we got this crappy ass healthcare system, or your taxes never go down, or they're teaching your 1-year-old to be a transgender, thinking the accumulation of stuff they're doing. If anything I give Trump credit for is that he put a light on it. That it isn't like we thought, and that's why we get back to forbidden knowledge. The forbidden knowledge was Washington, D.C. has never been working for at least the last 50 years in our interest. They have other agendas. And, of course, the system collapsed, is built to collapse on anyone who doesn't agree or finds out about that system.
Right. From doing what I've been doing for as long as I have, and also the background that I have, because I'm half Brazilian and I lived in Brazil for 5 years during high school. I was born here. And just seeing, when you leave the bubble of the United States, it's a very different world out there. You realize what a reality distortion field is going on here. I mean, but you know what? It's these are my people. I was born here. My family's here. I'm American, totally. And I think that we have to fight for what's right. And I'm really glad we have a president who's doing that. And it's the measure of how corrupt everything is how abused he's being in the mainstream media. And I hope that it's because it's so obvious to me that it should boomerang back on them. It should be really obvious to a lot of people what's going on. But some people are really because it was hard for me to overcome. I've spent most of my life in New York, in the New York City area, and I've had to deal with Trump, in the local tabloids, and it's like, yuck, I mean, like, gross. So I'm as surprised as anyone that I actually think he might be, one of the greatest moments in U.S. presidential history for me was when he was at the NATO summit, and he told Angela Merkel, I don't know why U.S. taxpayers are funding most of NATO to protect you against Russia when you're getting all of your energy from Russia.
Yeah.
So, like, in one sentence, he like blew up the total Russian hacking narrative, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he blew up the whole thing, the whole NATO garbage, and blew up the whole, German racketeering. So it was great. It was just like, that's 5G chess right there. Brilliant. Yeah. I loved that. It was like, I literally, it was almost an out-of-body experience at that point, because I've never heard a more coherent statement out of a U.S. president's mouth than that one.
Yeah, I agree with you. And he obviously, he is standing up against. He has shot a cannon across the bow of big tech social media giants, saying, maybe we need to look into you. Those social media platforms are now, by necessity, a public utility. They may have started out thinking they're an independent company, but they're not. People depend on them, and they need to be regular. AT&T was like that.
This illusion that they're an independent company is that they are products of the intelligence apparatus of the U.S. government. It's very vast. There are millions of people in our government, so it's you can't really say the government, all right? Obviously, there's a part of the government that is very much against Trump and is trying to break him down, and that is who is this faction that set up these companies to spy on us. And it's more than just spying on us and shaping our opinions. It's just even, like, they're constantly optimizing the search algorithms. Mm-hmm. So, like, they're suppressing searches. And you can see if somebody's really a big deal, a big cheese in Silicon Valley, like, try looking up Peter Thiel, the guy who founded Palantir, which is a massive data mining company. And he has a bunch of companies. I think he was one of the founders of PayPal. Mm-hmm. And you'll see there's like nothing on him. And this brings me back to 2003 when you would dial in Dick Cheney for a while. Like, there was nothing to be found on Dick Cheney. It's like, what is this, like a banana republic or something? This is not right. This is not the way things should be. So this inevitably brings us to the conversation of, what belongs in the government's realm, what belongs in the private sector, and how do we manage all of this? And so I think, it's stuff we have to work out and get right. Mm-hmm. Because it really is a new era. Social media is something that really hasn't existed for more than 10 years, certainly on the level, the degree to which it exists today. Mm-hmm. And, even when Obama was elected, it wasn't as powerful, the first time in 2008. Mm-hmm. It really wasn't where, social media wasn't where it has become, mm-hmm. to the point where it will make or break a presidency. And yes, I think that websites like mine, and the alt media, sites, especially on YouTube, had a huge role in Trump's election in 2016. Mm-hmm.
And really, it kind of got away from it was just in its infancy with Obama, and they couldn't leverage it for his guaranteed election, go back to 2016 and Hillary's election. They could not leverage it for that. I mean, America was just in a daze for the first two terms of Obama, thinking that finally race relations are going to be taken care of. Finally, somebody can talk to both, and we can get along and move ahead. But instead, that didn't happen. And then we had what's her face come up there, and they couldn't leverage it enough, so they come up with this collusion scam, to try to guarantee her crowning. She didn't even she didn't even campaign, really. She was expecting to be crowned, and that really didn't happen. But now, I understand, I thought I read the other day that Google could change 16 million votes just by changing what people see. And that right there is dangerous. Those people cannot be in charge.
A much bigger deal. You're right. Google search is a much bigger deal than any of this Facebook stuff that we've been talking about that people have been going up and being, Mark Zuckerberg going in front of a panel, Facebook, and Diamond and Silk and whatever, and when people being taken down from Facebook is like, who cares? The most powerful of all is Google and Google search. And that is like the 8,000-pound gorilla that really needs to be addressed.
Well, I'll tell you what, I know a lot of people are hoping that somebody will come up with an alternative, but man, it's kind of like the iPhone. When Apple was getting ready to roll it out, all the other phone companies knew it was coming out, and you can go back to the mouse. People thought, well, the mouse isn't going to be worth anything because computer experts don't use a mouse; they use a keyboard. So they poo-pooed that, and look what happened with that. And then the iPhone came out, and they got way ahead of the curve because nobody else thought they could do it, and that people would want that kind of phone. And so here we are again. So you got to kind of look ahead in the future. But let me ask you something. You said you were sort of a liberal upbringing. What was one of the first couple things that made you go, well, wait a minute now, or any kind of
well,
epiphanies
okay,
or
I guess
anything?
it started back maybe in 2015 when I started listening to some of the things that Donald Trump was saying, and it was like he sounds like us in the alternative media, because basically, I think we really need to take the scales off our eyes about left and right and conservative and liberal, because I think ultimately it should be about freedom, freedom of speech, and everything that they did so well in the Constitution. Okay. And we don't need to reinvent the wheel over here. Okay. So he was saying some things about how controlled and manipulative the media is. It's a corporate media that's bought and paid for. I know a little bit about this. My stepfather worked at Hill and Knowlton for a while, and then public relations. He had a public relations firm, and he would say, yeah, I planted that story. And you realize that what's on the news is not news. It was a bought and paid for story. So I already saw that. I've seen a lot of things from behind the scenes. That's just the weirdness of my life. Like right now, I didn't know when I started publishing this website that I would be in the middle of like this thing that we're in right now, the war. We are in a war, an information war that's really happening on the internet. Mm-hmm. And I'm right smack dab in the middle of it, and I didn't expect it. But my whole life has kind of been like that. Mm-hmm. I lived half a block away from the World Trade Center for 8 years. Mm-hmm. And I was living there when that happened. So that's just the way my life is.
Well, that's interesting you said that, because I was thinking that Alex Jones is almost a prophet in that area. I called his original website called InfoWars, and so well, there's a war, might be a war out there. It sounds like just left and right people going at it. Maybe just disagreeing, whatever. But no, it's much bigger than that. It's what kind of world we want to live in, and if we don't all, and this side of it, kind of work together, lift each other up, promote each other, get each other's backs, then, a lot can be done with Twitter to use those forces against them at this point before they fine tune those algorithms to eliminate any backlash. But right now there can be backlash. For instance, Prager University had their millions of viewed YouTube videos with just the traffic just went down to nothing. And then they came back and go, oh, or was it Facebook? Who knows? But say, oh, our mistake. They keep doing this, our mistake, but it always seems to be on the alt-right. They never make that old mistake. You got people like Sarah Young at the New York Times saying, I hate white people, and somehow they actually give her a pass and say, oh, well, people were mean to her, so she could say all these years of racist stuff, and that's okay. And I remember, was it Michelle Monk? No, it wasn't Michelle Monk. Who was it? Candace Owens. She took out of Sarah Young. I don't know if you know who Sarah Young is. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah, no, and I know all about the Candace Owens story, about how she
just changed,
replaced black and white in the same.
Yeah, so that's right. That was emblematic. That's emblematic of the war we got going on.
Yeah.
And we do have to band together. And like I say, I hope somebody comes up with a different platform so we can just start gravitating toward that. It will take some time.
Actually, there's a bigger thing that needs to happen, and actually, Trump just addressed it in the Indiana rally that he had a couple days ago. Mm-hmm. Basically, these, as I was saying, these social media giants are actually part of the intelligence apparatus of the United States, and they were financed and, come on, Google Maps, Google Earth, all of these things are being done with taxpayer money, with the Geospatial Intelligence Agency. We know what every street looks like on the planet now. I mean, that's come on. This is not like a private company. It's almost like we're the Soviet Union. Do you understand? Like the Facebooks of the world are very Soviet business models, and they've been. This is not. It's very antitrust. Okay, so and I mean they're breaking all kinds of like FEC laws. They're election tampering at this point. You understand? So there's antitrust, there's FEC, there are several laws that can be brought to bear to correct the situation. I don't know if there's time to do that before the election, but we can certainly raise consciousness about it. It's certainly, social media or not social media is as much. Unless you include YouTube, which it is. So YouTube is really what got Trump elected, I think.
Well, you talk about planting stories in the news. That reminds me of what Bruce Orr was doing. He was planting stories in the newspapers. Then he took those stories to the FISA court, say, hey, look, these newspapers over here are verifying our intelligence. And it was his intelligence, man. This is the way they work. And why he still has a job and has been thrown in jail. This is, if it wasn't for Trump, man, we wouldn't know the how deep this rabbit hole goes. Swamp is not swampy enough, man. It's deeper than that. It's pure evil, man.
It really is. And this is the deal. And these people are just the very tip fringe of the evil that we're talking about, and that is what Alex Jones calls the globalists. And who and what are the globalists? It boils down to the people who control the money and how money and all the transaction processing, and that allegedly centers around Basel, Switzerland. It's called the Committee. It's very hierarchical. And it comes down to 30 or to 10, and then 3 top guys who are really the bosses that you'll never know who they are. I have a friend who was in Marines intelligence, and he met some of these people, and he said they are so mundane, they're invisible. You would never know who they are and what they are.
Yeah, and you really wouldn't even know if they're human. I'm going to go with that hole too.
Right.
Look, man, I'm convinced there's some people that's not humans walking among us.
No, but he says, they are so mundane that it is almost inhuman. It's weird.
All right, we're getting questions in for you from our live chat. So let's get to one of these. This is from Dreamwalker. It says, can you share with us the most astonishing, forbidden bit of knowledge that you've come across?
Wow, astonishing. I'm going to have to think about that one. There are a lot of astonishing. What's astonishing?
Well, I'll tell you what's astonishing. If Hillary runs in 2020, that's going to be astonishing.
Exactly. It's really hard. Like, the thing is so political right now. It's really hard because it would be something scientific, and it would have something to do with subatomic stuff. And
hey, I noticed in one of your writings you talk about quantum physics, and then here's another. I think I captured this from something that I read from you. Is it many worlds versus wave function collapse?
Right.
What is that?
Okay, this is pretty weird and astonishing.
Okay, good.
The whole idea of, so we've all been taught how an atom, the old school model of an atom, let's say a hydrogen atom, you have the proton in the middle and the electron that's going around it, right?
Right.
It's going so fast that it's in a shell, and it's going so fast that you can't really pin it down, like where it is, because it's going so fast. So it's in a superposition, is what they call it. It's in a field of possible places where it can be. And so if you scale up this idea, so that's the fundamental idea of quantum physics. And then by measuring it, that's what the double slit experiment was. You can actually say, oh, it's here. But it's only there because you measured it. Because it was, it's out of time, basically. It's not really in space-time as we know it. And so if you scale up that basic idea of the superposition, this is what the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics is, which is that the universe isn't a superposition. The universe is a multiverse of endless possibilities, with each particle interacting with the other. I mean, it's like so infinite. You know, you thought you understood infinity, you don't. It's like beyond infinity. Okay, and so that is the whole idea of parallel universes. And so when you talk about wave function collapse, that's when you go, oh, it's there. The electron was there, or this happened. You know, this was measured. It's measurable. That's what wave function collapse is, because otherwise, that's the wave versus the particle paradigm. That's what wave function collapse is, when it becomes the particle.
How do
If that makes sense?
Yeah, I'm with you. How do we know that from second to second we're in the same universe?
How do what?
How do we know from second to second we're in the same universe?
We're just It's an agreement we're making with each other.
Oh, elaborate on that.
It's hard to elaborate on, but it's basically it's agreements. We're making an agreement about that. We're having this conversation that this, you know, it's not just between us. It's between, you know, my ISP and the internet connection and the electrons and the light waves and the sound waves, and, you know, basically. Oh, so how do we know when we've slipped into like a Mandela effect type of thing? Is that what you're asking?
Well, yeah, sure, why not?
Yeah, because sometimes it really seems like that. So,
okay, so it's a sort of like Schrodinger's cat. Now, I think that the theory of that is...
Right, the fact that Trump won is very much like, okay, we're in a totally different universe than the one I thought we were in, because it didn't look, you know, everyone said he wasn't going to win. I mean, I kind of knew he was. I don't know why. It didn't make any sense. But maybe it's because I know what big liars these people are. So the thing is that especially when you have so much lying going on, to really know what's real becomes, you know, like a mountain that maybe you'll never get to the top of.
Well, when you have a multiverse theory, is it possible to travel from one universe to another willingly? Without this, or let's say unwillingly, because you said we're in an agreement to be where we are. What if we don't agree, or what if the universe tries to make that decision for us?
Right. Well, the first book that I ever wrote was released in January of 2001. That was actually about this topic, and it was about secret government projects and the survivors of these who claimed that they were involved in precisely that, in creating creating different outcomes, you know, by going into the future.
I like that.
And into the past. So, yeah.
Well, you did read.
You know, could we prove it? I don't know, but it's funny that, you know, more and more you're seeing these themes. Basically, so I met the serendipity. Okay, when I wrote, it's called The Philadelphia Experiment Murder. That one, which has the craziest cover art. I was like, what are you doing to me? So I ended up, you know, very serendipitously in the process of writing the book. And the way that happened was I just happened to go to a UFO conference, and I went up to speak to Peter Moon, the publisher of all the Montauk Project books. And I started talking to him about the various ideas that he'd been, you know, exploring in those books. And he says, wow, you're really intelligent. How would you like to write the next Montauk Project book? And I said, great. And because, you know, I wasn't getting paid or whatever, it took, you know, I was working triple shifts at menial restaurant jobs while I did it. So it took 3 years to do. But over the course of that time, I ended up befriending, and it was totally not on purpose, the son of the guy who these people in the Montauk Project allege was the director of the Montauk Project, whose name was Jack Pruitt, from Texas, by the way, from Dallas. And that's where Glenn Pruitt, his son, was from. And he claims that his grandfather was Nikola Tesla's intern while he was at the University of Colorado, and that he helped him come up with the filament, the alloy that was used in the filament in the Thomson tubes, the vacuum tubes that were used to amplify the radiation that was used in the Philadelphia experiment that teleported the ship, blipped it out of our timeline.
Well, Alexandra, we're right at the top of the hour, so we take a 5-minute break here. Tell the folks how and what they can find on ForbiddenKnowledgeTV.net.
You can find alternative everything, alternative politics, alternative science, alternative, just really fun mind candy, I guess, is what it is. It's stuff that I think is fun to explore, and that, obviously my subscribers do too. I send a newsletter every day, free. It's totally free, and I love to do it, and my subscribers love it too.
All right, we're going to take you out of the picture, but still be connected to you, and we'll be back with you in 5 minutes. All right, everybody, you're watching and/or listening to the Edge Television broadcast on our Newsmaker line tonight. Via Skype is Alexandra Bruce, and we'll be back in the second hour with Alexandra. So you just stay tuned, and we're going to be right back. Oh, sorry about that. Welcome back to the Edge Television broadcast. And we were just ending the first hour talking about the Philadelphia experiment book that you wrote. Now, that's sort of a time warp situation there. Now, so are you saying that event really happened?
Well, over the course of writing that book, I discovered actually that the official version that we've been hearing about in Philadelphia seems to have been seeded into the pop culture by a branch of the Navy that doesn't exist anymore, but it's basically would be, I guess, a part of naval intelligence, and that it probably didn't go down like that. I ended up meeting an engineer who was in his 80s back then, is probably no longer with us, who claimed to have worked on an experimental minesweeper, where the men were coming up to him because it's crazy to even contemplate this, because we've only ever known life with the National Security Act. So this is what's so mind-blowing, is that this was before the passage of the 1947 National Security Act in the early 1940s. I think it was 1940. He was working on this experimental minesweeper, and the sailors were coming up to him during breaks and saying, "Oh my God, this boat was teleport." They didn't use the word teleport because there was no paradigm for calling it teleporting. They were just saying, "We looked out the window and we were back in Philadelphia." And they were actually putting out from Newport, Rhode Island, where there's a big Navy base there. Mm-hmm. And his experiments were being conducted there in Block Island Sound. And there was exactly that occurrence of a guy being, when the ships snapped back to its point of origin, there was a guy who was like embedded in the steelwork. And then they went and they showed him. They said, "See here on the splash cowling, like we had to sand all of this down and repaint it, and to saw his body out of there." And the details were so, granular that he told me. And then I actually, because he didn't remember what the name of the boat was or anything, but he did remember what the numbers that were on the hull. And I was able to find it through a friend who looked at, the Encyclopedia of Naval Ships. And I found out the whole history of this ship, which had been a private yacht owned by a Connecticut millionaire. And it was commandeered during the war, for the war effort, for them to do experiments, because the biggest problem at that time were German submarines. So this whole premise that it was about radar he said, was faulty. Mm-hmm. The Philadelphia experiment was not about radar. Mm-hmm. That was a cover story. And it was the Aldridge was a cover story. He believes it was this boat, which was then decommissioned and given back to the owner. And it was called the USS Martha's Vineyard, and the hull number was IX-97, and IX is a hull classification that indicates experimental. Mm-hmm. And what these guys described was a machine that was on the back deck. It was not the experiment that he was working on. They were just telling him about this other experiment that previous to his, and that it was like the size of a refrigerator, and it was putting out like a triple counter-rotating field that he believed, what he understood, would basically create a bubble around the ship that would decouple it from this timeline physically.
Wow.
And he believes that this was how he called it divided space. That was his concept. His name was Bob Beckwith, and you can search around for him. And it was actually through, if you know who, I'm forgetting his name, Daryl Sims. If you know who Daryl Sims is.
Yeah, I researched that a while ago, but I can't remember.
So anyway, I bought the book. I bought Bob Beckwith's book through him.
Yeah.
Called Hypotheses, where he describes his whole theory of divided space.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay, we've got another question for you. This is from Doreen8951. Do you know anything about Nibiru?
Well, what I know about Nibiru is what everybody knows about Nibiru. I don't think that anything is going to come into the inner solar system and crash into the planet Earth. I don't believe that. I don't think that's not how it works. I think smaller things can happen. I think they're now openly saying that there's another planet beyond Neptune out there that's large and probably Neptune sized, like further out, because they can see the gravitational anomalies that it's creating, and maybe that's Nibiru. There was also, if you've ever heard of Walter Cruttenden, and others, who believe that we have a binary solar system, and that it's a brown dwarf. That the twin, and actually in the physical universe that we know about, binary systems are much more common than a single star. Like a binary star that rotates around itself is a much more common kind of star system. And so in this case, because we obviously don't see it, they think that it must be very cold and what would be called a brown dwarf, no more than like 200 degrees in temperature.
Trump recently announced something called the Space Force, another branch of the military. Some claim that we've had a Space Force for a long time. Would that fall under the heading of forbidden knowledge?
Absolutely. And I like back in the day, in the early 2000s, late 90s, I was talking to guys who basically claimed not to be part of any sort of Space Force on ships, but more like in interdimensional time travel type of projects. I do think maybe for a local solar system thing, that it might be useful, but the distances, it doesn't make, we're not going to get anywhere in a tin can. That's not the way to go at it.
Alexander, did we land on the moon?
This is a toughie for me because that's one of my earliest memories was watching the moon landing. And
let go, Alexander. You've got to let go. You've got to let go. Okay. I've been running a lot of clips that really make it seem highly dubious that we did. Well, what's up with this new movie coming out about astronauts landing on the moon? I guess they cut out the putting of the American flag there because they said it was a world event, not American. Americans didn't put their ingenuity together with 400,000 NASA scientists. It was a world event. All people put that. What kind of BS is that?
Well, that's the globalist agenda, 100%.
There is no country. They don't like the idea of borders, I understand.
Right. Well, I mean, look at what it did. It turned, the United States into a nation of baristas, people who work at Starbucks and Walmart. I mean, Is this whole
transgender thing a part of the Agenda 21 or depopulation thing of the Georgia Guidestones?
Well, it's funny because, I did hear, like, as far back as 20 years ago, Stuart Swerdlow, who was a Montauk Project person, he said that homosexuality, and he didn't even, I don't think that anyone imagined where the whole transgender thing is gone, was going to be heavily promoted as part of a UN thing. And I say this, I've known transgender people my whole life. There really are not very many of them, but I've known a couple. And they're human beings. They are children of God and of the universe. They deserve to be supported and loved and taken care of. But these fascist laws that are being enacted where you can actually go to jail for using the wrong pronoun and things like this.
Right.
This is very terrible.
Yeah, it seems like there was a kid in a grade school that called his teacher ma'am, and she kicked him out and made him write, "I will not call you ma'am" 100 times or something. I don't know what she was supposed to be called or it or it's like you don't even know anymore. It's like this lockdown on speech is going on. It's an extenuation of this battle against just normalized
Absolutely.
society.
It's part of the same control paradigm. It's a totally destabilizing and controlling and fear-based. It's horrible.
Well, hey, let me ask you something. We're talking about forbidden knowledge, man. Is Michelle a man?
Oh, I did run. I've seen there is that one where she's on the Ellen show dancing.
Yeah, and those big old pants.
Have you seen that with the balls? The balls,
Yeah,
like
yeah, I seen that. There's something in there, Alexandra.
yeah. There's a package.
I mean, come on, man. I mean, you can't look at it and not see that thing.
It's once seen, it cannot be unseen.
Well,
And then there's the other time when Obama's addressing some military thing and he's saying, Michael and I, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, what?
Yeah, right. I've seen that. It's like, you don't make that. That's not a mistake that you make.
No.
And so I'm just saying that's so the forbidden knowledge, man. I figure if she'd just come on out, or he or it or whatever it is, man.
Come on, like, isn't gayness supposed to be okay? So then why can't we just come on? Yeah, if all this transgender legislation, why are you in the closet then?
Yeah,
what's that all about?
What about all these gay men that died around Obama?
I don't mind. Homosexuality is fine. I hate closeted.
Yeah, just come on out.
Yeah.
Tell us who you really are, Michael.
Right.
Just let if you're letting that thing hang out, then just tell us who you are, man. We're good with that. We just don't. I agree with you. We just don't like being lied to.
Right.
Our little shoulders, man. I tell you, I wouldn't want to get near him. He'd cold cock you. Whew. I was like, that's something wrong right there. Well, that's kind of forbidden knowledge, man. Let me ask you another forbidden knowledge. We got a lot of people going down to Antarctica. That sounds pretty forbidden right there. What's going on down there?
Well, okay. The whole thing, this then goes to maybe the axial tilt of the Earth and Atlantis and what is our real history here on this planet, and the idea of Atlantis in Antarctica, which has been really researched and published about by this Canadian couple called the Flem-Aths. They have a funny name, FLEM-ATHS, Flem-Aths. So you can look that up, and it's Atlantis in Antarctica. And Graham Hancock, the great Graham Hancock, cites their work. He doesn't endorse it fully. He's just saying it's very interesting. And there is something. I wrote extensively about this in a book called 2012, Science or Superstition, where I covered. It was a film that was based on the work of Graham Hancock. So covering a lot of these themes that Graham Hancock has covered, and he was in the film. And basically, we have in mainstream science, they want to make everything be gradualism, unless it's global warming, right? Unless it's global warming, and I've been hearing that the planet was going to be dead by now since I was a child. Okay, because I went to this super liberal school where pollution and everything, there would be no life left on Earth because of pollution by now. That's what I was taught. There would be no life.
Right.
So I've been hearing this because, I don't know how many people really went to schools as liberal as I did. So I've been hearing sort of things maybe 20 years ahead of most people because I was in a very elite liberal grammar school. And so they want everything to be gradual, unless it's that, which is really about carbon taxes and carbon trading, fraudulent derivatives, based on carbon trading. But otherwise, they want everything to be gradualist and everything's under control and, go back to sleep. Whereas then you have other people like a royal astronomer whose name is escaping me right now, who are catastrophists and who say, no, things have happened. Like your friend who asked the question about Nibiru, what she's really asking is more like, can something catastrophic, like an asteroid that extinguished the dinosaurs, happen again in our lifetimes? And the answer is yes, because there is a blind spot where we can't see things coming at us. And it is in the realm of possibility that either an asteroid or maybe a gamma ray burst could just like extinguish life very rapidly. Things like that have happened. On the other hand, our solar system and our end of the universe is sort of older now. It's not as young and chaotic anymore, so that stuff doesn't happen as often. But not that long ago, in geological terms, something major did happen. And we're talking about almost 13,000 years ago, which ended the last ice age. And that ties into the Antarctica question, because prior to that, people had maps that were passed down and copied to each other, and the head of the Ottoman Empire, which was one of the biggest powers of the planet back then, up until World War I, actually, for hundreds of years, he had, in the 1500s, the Piri Reis map showed an exact, very faithful rendition of the Antarctic coast that we only got like a few years ago after doing tomography scans of below miles of ice sheets. Like, so how did this Ottoman Turk have a map with a very accurate rendition of the Antarctic coast? Because obviously humans were alive when there was no ice on that thing. And so what's that all about? And if you really look at the body of legends, all across the ancient world, there was a time when it was an eternal spring and you didn't have chaotic weather and seasons, which are caused by the axial tilt of the Earth. If it was like this, it'd be the same all the time. So what did that? Was the same thing that did that the thing that froze covered over Antarctica, that seemed to flash freeze mammoths and dinosaurs and like all kinds of megafauna, as they're called. Like there used to be camels and zebras and giant bears and all the saber-toothed tiger versions of every animal. Giant sloths that are bigger than elephants were all over the place in America. Okay, and pretty much in one day, like at least in some areas, these things were flash frozen. Like in mid chew, they had like clovers in their mouths. They had like little daisies, flowers, and flash frozen.
Doesn't that cataclysmic event you're describing lend credibility to the history of a great flood?
Yes, it's part of that. Whatever happened, because there had been an ice age, and there was, because all of the fresh water was caught up in those ice caps, the coastlines of the planet were like, basically it was 400 feet less of water covering everything. So that means miles more, hundreds of miles in some areas where it's very shallow, where the seabed is very shallow. So that's how people were able to walk across the land bridges, not just in, between Russia and Alaska, but all over the world. There was much more exposed land back then. And so that's the other thing, is that they say, when I think of Atlantis, I don't think of a place. I think of a time. I think of a time when there was more land mass exposed. And if it was like today, where most people live on the coastline, I do. I live right next to the water, and I have most of my life. That back then, so it was basically, it's under 400 feet of water now, that whole civilization. And of course, water is very corrosive, and it does, it rots things. That's what water does. So only a few, stone things can survive tens of thousands plus hundreds of thousands of years of that.
Well, we're talking about forbidden knowledge. One topic that comes to mind on that is the idea that there were giants even here in America, but pretty much recorded all around the world. In fact, biblically, there were villages of giants, and I think there's even a banned book of the biblical text called the Book of Giants. But they have found early in American history, the mounds had skeletons in them. They're finding evidence of large skulls and megaliths that can only be built by giants. Now, it turns out that there's a historical record of the Smithsonian Institute every time there's a giant bones found, particularly in the mounds and otherwise, that they will come out and say, "Oh, this is great. Can you donate to that to our great institution?" And then they whisk it away, bury it somewhere in the Smithsonian in their deep bowels of the underground base there, and never heard from it again, and nor did they admit it. But why is there such an effort to cover up the existence of pre-existing giants in this land?
Well, that is probably one of the biggest secrets that there is, and such that I don't really know very much about it, except for certain Native American legends like the Paiutes, who have legends of red-haired giants who they killed off the last of them in their cave. They set a fire in their cave and smoked them to death or whatever. Mm-hmm. But there's a very vibrant oral tradition in the southwestern United States mm-hmm. of giants. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're not like 30-foot tall giants. They might be 6 to 7 foot tall giants that are now.
Have you heard of the Kandahar giant?
What's that?
Have you heard of the Kandahar giant?
Well, I've seen pictures of him. Yeah, I mean, he was an Afghan. He was huge. He was, I don't know, like 8 feet tall or something.
Yeah, the order on that was, from what intel was released through the people that were there, is that they were given orders to shoot at the head because somehow or another the DNA of the giants, which evidently our forces know quite readily, is that it has a regenerative effect on the body, sort of like cutting an arm off a toad. You just can't really kill it by shooting it. You have to cut the head off. But going back to the idea that the government seems bent on, and you just said yourself, it's one of the biggest historical cover-ups there are about the existence of giants. But one of the sort of sideline aspects of the existence of giants is that 2,000 years ago, it was written about giants in the Bible. You have, David and Goliath. Now that's kind of a kid story, but
not just the Bible. So many traditions.
So
traditions all over the globe talking about giants.
So what one of the aspects is looking forward from trying to stop the historical record that proves legitimacy to the Bible. It's got to be part of the government's overall plan to delegitimize it. And now there are other folks that are saying that the Mandela effect is changing it. So if it's being changed to the Mandela effect, then there's something that the government does not want people to know about that's in that Bible.
Right. It's hard to say because when, years ago, when I first started looking at all of this, to me, it seemed like they were trying to control information that would really, because back, in the 19th century, and still many people in the United States today believe in just very hardcore creationism, that God created the world in 6 days or whatever, and then there was a day of rest. Mm-hmm. And they didn't want to upset that order. They thought it was better to let people just cling, stay believing what they believe. Because if suddenly their world got turned upside down, it would, could crash the stock market or whatever the equivalent was back then. Mm-hmm. And that's a big part of it too, is the chaos and the crashing markets and like the financial impacts of information at this point.
Mm-hmm. And information does have a very big impact on the financial markets. I mean, I think Trump with a tweet can cause massive loss of value to any company that he tweets against. They should not be fighting him. I mean, it seems like everybody who comes up against Trump, whether it's Megyn Kelly or John McCain, you name it, something happens to them. Or that one skier in the Winter Olympics broke a leg, after she went on a rant against Trump. So another guy, the gay guy, probably got AIDS. So I'm just saying, he can really cause the value of your company. They ought not to come against him. But I'm on your website right now, and one of the interesting articles that just kind of hit me in the eyes, really relevant to today, says, and this is one of the articles on ForbiddenKnowledgeTV.net. It says, Sue Black catches pedophiles by looking at the marks on their hands. Mm-hmm. What kind of mark is that?
Well, no, it's just that everybody's hands are, and mostly the vein patterns are even identical twins. They're totally different, the vein patterns.
Okay.
And so, it's a really phenomenal talk that she gave, because, so she's an anatomist. She is an expert in dismemberment. Whoa. Like, she's been a crime scene investigator, like a criminal, a forensic anatomist. And so she can tell you how and with what weapon and how long ago and everything. If somebody's, If a husband or a wife chopped each other up, she can tell you exactly how they did it.
Wow.
So she's an extraordinary woman because she does that, which is terrifying. Like, all the information is horrifying, but she covers it with such dignity and wit that you're not surprised that she was knighted by the British Empire. Like, she deserved it.
Has she magnified a picture of Bill Clinton's hands, or maybe Hillary's hands too as well?
Sure. Well, she talks about one case, which is pretty amazing because we're on Skype, so this is something maybe not a lot of Skype users know about. I didn't. Which is that if you just keep it running and recording, and it turns off, and you turn all the lights off, it goes into infrared. It starts recording in infrared.
Wow, did not know.
And so this girl who was being abused by her father did that. She turned her computer on, turned the Skype on, it went to infrared, and she was able to film her father abusing her, which was then used in a court case. But the people, incredibly, she says, did not convict the father because she didn't seem emotionally upset enough. That was their. They said the science was fine, but she wasn't acting like upset enough.
Well, the devaluation of children and or the sexualization and abuse of children is running rampant out there.
It's crazy.
I mean, here I'm going to go to just those Muslim terrorists out there in New Mexico. Here's a dead body, a dead boy sitting out there, and it's like, oh, there's a body there. You know, well, I guess everything's good here. Just send them on their way. I mean, wasn't it a crime to abduct a child from one state and transfer him to another state? Seemed like there would have been an Amber Alert. But now this has got to be the first time I've ever read where there's a body and there's no crime.
Yeah, and they got to go off on bail. And then through misfilings or whatever, the case was thrown out entirely.
Yeah.
This is the weirdest case. You know, they were being trained to do school shootings. This looks like, let's talk about the Las Vegas massacre. I mean, talk about a shady story. They officially closed that case. Meanwhile, they've released, the AP, which is fascinating. The Associated Press sued the Las Vegas police to release all of the audios, all of the body cams, all of the statements that were taken. They're all available online. Anyone can look at them. AP sues for them and then never does another report. And I don't know if you heard this. Apparently more is going to come out about that soon. But last week a story came out where Mary Lou Danley, who was his girlfriend, who is an Australian citizen, and it was through one of those, those background check websites that are, there are a ton of them. This was called Intellius, INTELIUS.com.
Familiar with it.
And anyone who has an account there can check it. I don't know if she's taken it down now, but they were able to, you could see she had applied for a loan and put as a previous place of employment, her most recent place of employment was the FBI. And then when the FBI was approached about that, they said, well, she might have received payments from us, but she wasn't an employee. So it's like, oh my God, you guys, can you get this story straight? I don't,
Yeah, there's so much fraud out there. It's like as you were saying that, I just remember that story of Debbie Wasserman Schultz, IT guy.
Yeah.
And this guy was running servers and with classified information from all kinds of people besides her and transmitting it to somewhere. And then his wife runs off to another country and then he tries to get an emergency loan and does a fraudulent app to get it. And he puts the server out in the rotunda somewhere in an office. He's got it's like, obviously the guy was a plant and a criminal. And then they just said, he's good. Let's let him go. It's just the same way they did the New Mexico terrorist. And it's like, can anybody commit any crime? Are they all in on this?
Basically, what you're seeing is how corrupt our criminal justice system has become, especially on the federal level. And basically, the only people who get charged with anything are the people who aren't on their team, and it's usually just for, obstruction or lying under oath, for some stupid, like maybe wrong fact, is turned into a criminal charge. And meanwhile, people who are full-blown spies get to walk. So it's, or training terrorists and murdering children. Apparently he was ritually sacrificed or something, this child. So it's just,
Well,
yeah.
what about this Philadelphia? What about this Philadelphia? All these priests, they say thousands of kids were molested by hundreds of priests. Who's going to jail?
Good question. They have, I guess they have some kind of Vatican immunity. I'm not really sure how that's going to get prosecuted.
What about Dianne Feinstein having a Chinese spy driving her around in her car for 20 years? And she's head of the Intelligence Committee. How can what kind of government do we have, Alexander?
I know, and it's more than that. She's also a huge, or her husband is a huge shareholder. If you notice, have you seen those videos where it shows like 20 television stations all speaking the same script?
Yeah, we played that one time. It was disgusting.
It's chilling. Yeah. So that is, the AP is involved with that. And that system, it's called the AVID system. And the news companies pay for it because it's like, wow, free content. Because basically the only thing that's really going on, I mean, they're just trying to get their ad revenue. And they need to fill it with content. And this has been approved. It's already been approved by the intelligence agencies, and this is the approved script of what the so-called news is. And that's what the news is. It's not news. The only thing that's maybe of any utility to you there is the weather report. And you don't really need the news to get that. So it's just garbage. The news is, everyone within earshot of my voice needs to stop watching CNN or any of those.
They never seem to ask the right questions. For instance, they're talking about recent days, the code that was planted on Hillary Clinton's server. Now, the government's intelligence committee found that code and said that it was making a courtesy copy of every single email made or sent, received or sent, and was copying it over to China. Now, then they were so concerned, they went to the FBI, where they told Peter Strzok and his bimbo lover there, Lisa Page, probably banging each other. Who knows what they were doing over there? Told them, said, well, there's a code in there. Now the FBI says they looked at it, there's no code. Now you can't have a code and discern what that code is doing and then say that there's not a code in there. Somebody's lying here. Somebody needs to go to jail. That code didn't disappear.
And then the whole Peter Strzok thing, and him getting fired from his FBI job. Well, he was a CIA agent. He didn't get fired from his CIA job. So it's just, gross. But it's amazing because so much of this all of the spy technology that was developed to be used against us is being turned on them right now, and it's all being revealed. It's pretty amazing. It's an amazing time to be alive. I mean, it's giant soap opera, and
that's what it is, a giant soap opera to distract us. I think the Bible says in the end days that which is done in secret will be revealed. And one thing the Trump's election has done, you say it was providential nearly that he got elected. He wasn't supposed to. Everything was arrayed against him. They had no doubt he had no chance. And, you can watch those YouTube funny videos of saying there's no way he's going to get elected and see how many people have said that. But, so you have this crazy stuff going on. And I think, like you said earlier in the first hour, it's they keep us distracted. They keep us against each other while their nefarious plans are being implemented against us.
Exactly. I guess that when we see a story, maybe we have to ask ourselves, what are we being distracted from? And with Peter Strzok, we were being he was being questioned about whether he had animus against the president as an FBI agent when nobody was really asking the question of him being a CIA agent who was working with John Brennan on the Crossfire hurricane operation to prevent Trump from getting elected and then to try to take him down after he was. That was the question that Congress did not ask him about.
Did Brennan become a Muslim because he didn't want Obama to fire him?
Oh, Brennan? Well, I think that he had been, if he had, some people say that he has prayer rugs in his office. I don't know. I've never been in his office. I don't know too much about that. I think he became a Muslim before.
Before Obama? No, it was during Obama's administration.
Oh, really? It was? Oh, my God. Oh,
All of a sudden he woke up one day and said, hey, I want to be a Muslim. And of course, Obama was very happy about that for some reason.
Well, you know what? Maybe they're all mind controlled. That's the other thing. A lot
Hey,
of these
speaking
people,
of that, well, we're talking about forbidden knowledge. What about this 5G network, Alexander? What's going on with that?
that is some heavy stuff. Okay, well, basically, it's necessary for the Internet of Things. Okay, which is a big bonanza, money bonanza for a lot of people. It's the beginnings of it are. I mean, I already have my router already gives me 5G. It's ready to do 5G, and it's at a millimeter wave that can interfere with your own brain waves.
Oh,
Can directly be weaponized to affect your thinking.
and that goes to when I was saying in the first hour, how do we know we're in the same universe? But the segue question is, how do we know what our thoughts are haven't been put there?
That's what I was exactly with so many lies and with this kind of technology and with maybe half of the people in the government literally being brainwashed or programmed. You know, it becomes very blurry indeed. And it almost becomes creational because I think consciousness is the ground. You know, that's the Lord. You know, and that's what creates. It's consciousness, and that's what's being subverted. It's very Luciferian. It's quite. You know, the Bible does speak in a Bronze Age language about all this high tech stuff that we're seeing happening right now.
I know it's one of those scriptures that says that in end times people will receive a mark in their hand or the forehead. They won't be able to buy or sell without that mark, some kind of mark of the beast. But if you look over there in China, I think Google has created or maybe it's Chinese government, but I thought Google was in on it, a social media score. Are you you're aware of that? And if you're good, if you're really good, then your social score will go up and you'll get better jobs, you get lower interest rates. But if you're bad, it goes the other way. And it sounds to me like the social giants in this country are slowly implementing that and acclimating us to accept that. We want to be good. You mentioned in the first hour, you talk about it's so scary that they're talking about behavior, but they never tell you what the acceptable behavior is. It's wide open. It's really whatever they say it is. And that's disgusting to me right there. I'm not, I want to have the worst social score there is.
We already have, with the credit rating system that we have currently and with the amount of, data that's available. I mean, you can't rent a house in California by law without a background check. You can't rent an apartment in the state of California and you have to pay the $50 background.
Well, unless you're illegal.
Exactly.
And you got to make sure you have no straws in your house. You know, I mean, in the old days, they used to make sure you didn't have termites. Now they make sure you don't, in California, make sure that you don't have a straw in there.
Right. Yeah, it's very dystopian. But I don't know, you know, it might have been really dystopian before. It's just that now that we know about it, you know, information. Is,
like I say, in the first hour when I was saying, we assume forever, really, Americans want to be trusting. They want to trust their government. Everybody wants to trust their government. Now, I can never again trust the CIA. I can never again trust the Justice Department or CIA. For that matter, as far as I know, the only people left is the Secret Service. The only reason I know that because Trump hasn't been assassinated yet. So they might be the only organization up there that still has some credibility and some morals and have American values. But other than that, the rest of them, I have no use for them. And Trump has exposed them so much, and they don't even know it. He holds that shiny object out there. And I don't know, he's like, they're playing checkers and he's playing chess because every single time they fall for that, they think they got him, they bite on it, and then something strange happens to him.
It's quite incredible. Yeah, they call it the Trump effect. It's like this boomerang effect. It's quite amazing. It's quite amazing to behold. But, you know, when you're talking about Trump, you're really not talking about just Trump. You're talking about who's behind him, too. And that is a faction of white hats in the military and in the intelligence establishment.
Did you say white hats?
Yeah, that's right, I did.
I'm not in on that now. I'm a good guy.
Right.
But yeah, there are a lot of people in on it, and it's been exposed. And so, like you said, when you read it, really they try to manipulate you just with the title of an article. You can tell where they're going immediately with the title of the article, but that isn't working on me anymore. And in the old days, I'd say, well, you know, they probably know something because they researched it well and they got their facts. But now you take CNN, for instance, there are no facts necessary and unnamed sources. They make up unnamed sources all the time. And where are these sources? Nobody knows.
it's it, it's a crime. I mean, it's treason. It's sedition. It's a capital offense being committed 24/7.
Speaking of treason, was John McCain a good guy or a bad guy in your view?
It's terrible. Like a sociopath, a very, very sick individual, and probably mind controlled.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I showed a picture in my Ranty Points. I don't know if you ever watched my Ranty Points. You have to watch the show. I don't archive them, though I should, because I know they certainly get banned from YouTube. But in my Ranty Points before this broadcast begins, early part of the show, I put a picture up there. It was John McCain going aboard a Russian ship, which had real young Russian prostitutes on it. He went there on his 70th birthday. I'm thinking, okay, well, what's this narrative here? You talk about Russian collusion, man. The guy's colluding with prostitutes, but it sounds to me like it's some kind of dystopian mind control. And he was put into Congress and raised up as some kind of hero. But in fact, he's been undermining the United States every move he makes.
Yep, really, he never did anything good. It's just, and I saw Owen Schroyer. There was one tiny channel that only had like 10 videos on it that was InfoWars documentaries on YouTube that was not taken down during that purge last month. And so they posted their first video in like over a month last night. And Owen Schroyer was going on for like 10 minutes about how the news had been all about like broadcasting nonstop McCain's body being flown all over the country, like 5 days of funeral services for McCain.
Man, I thought it was like Weekend at Bernie's, man. I mean, they was dragging his body everywhere, man. Everywhere you look, there's his corpse laying there. But they really advanced that whole narrative because both at Aretha Franklin's funeral and John McCain's funeral, again, I talked about this in the rants earlier, they use them as political platforms now. So now funerals aren't even safe, just to be apolitical, mourn the person in the grave. Now it's like, well, he may be dead, but Trump's a bad guy. Trump needs to be impeached. What is that doing at a funeral?
Exactly. I know. Yeah, like the daughter of McCain said, America doesn't need to be made great again or whatever. That was her big statement.
Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, why would you say that at a funeral? And besides that, it seems to me, didn't the New York governor just say America was never great? Well, which is it?
Exactly. Yeah, get it straight, guys. Like, figure it out.
Yeah. So, all right. So, what else you got coming up? What are you looking at? What are you studying? What's getting your ire these days?
Well, like the next thing, and I think a lot of what this distraction is all about is the global currency reset that is upon us. And we're not sure, we've been hearing it was going to happen for a long time. And like 5 years ago, it was going to happen. And speaking to people who, I have like sort of a source who knows about these things. And it was supposed to happen in 2014, as you may recall. We were supposed to, remember, everyone had to buy silver and gold and get out of dollars and liquidate or whatever, and then preppers and all of that stuff.
All right.
And it didn't happen. And then it was supposed to happen the next, like October 2015, and then it didn't happen. And it keeps on not happening.
When's it going to happen?
Right. And so this is another interesting factoid about the tech giants is that this is what's crazy. The Federal Reserve Bank systems, this is the one in New York, Chicago, Denver, I think Atlanta, LA, San Francisco. I'm not sure what all the cities are. But they are like 1/3. They invest in the stock market like private entities. Mm-hmm. So there's nothing federal about these institutions. And they own a huge percentage of the tech stocks because there's such great things to own. They're so hyper-valuated, okay? These things are being used, these tech stocks, these Facebooks are being used to float the dollar right now, because the Federal Reserve is so heavily invested in them, which has driven their price up, and it's basically what's buoying the dollar as we speak. So if Trump takes them to task, they were allowed to turn into these monopolies because they're part of the intelligence apparatus, okay? There's nothing private about these corporations. If you just see what the whole thing is, it's so Soviet. Can you see what I'm talking about? These social media platforms, they're buoying the dollar with the Federal Reserve. they're spying on us. I mean, they're like everything. Everything is like attached to these things at this point. You know, they got him elected. They're trying to unelect, and you know, they're like the biggest thing going right now. Information is, you know, data is the new money, and so yeah, he has to be very careful about how he approaches them, because the dollar really is hinged on the social media stocks, on these big tech stocks.
Isn't Europe trying to get away from the dollar?
Everyone is and has been, and that's why we invaded Iraq. That's why we invaded Libya. That's why Syria too. All these countries that basically they didn't have a branch of the central banking system that is headquartered in Basel, Switzerland. So the only remaining countries left are Russia, Syria. You know, that's what North Korea is about. It's about putting a central bank.
Who's the bigger threat to us, China or Russia?
China, absolutely.
Then why all the talk about Russia?
That's a complete deflection. It's a dog. You know, it's the feather dance. It's like the burlesque.
Yeah, I mean, Hillary got along with Russia pretty good. You know,
everyone did. It's just garbage. It's absolute smoke and mirrors, total garbage, nonsense.
I mean, Hillary gave away 25% of our uranium, so I guess they're buddy buddies. So you know, I'm glad to see that.
How about us? You know, offshoring our entire like manufacturing base to China. I mean, that was done. That was totally all Kissinger and Clinton and these globalists. I'm glad that finally this put the brakes on that. I have nothing against the Chinese. I've been to China twice. It's an amazing country. It's actually amazing. You know, they're fabulous, fabulous people.
Have you ever heard the term Sabbatean Kabbalist?
Yes.
What the hell's that?
The Sabbateans.
Don't like them.
They were a sect of. Basically, it was in the 1600s in Poland, and his name was Zvi Sabbatai. He was a cleric, a Jewish cleric. Of the extreme, you know, Lubavitcher sect, which is what Ivanka Trump's husband is. And he dresses normally, but most of them, they're almost like the Amish or like that. You know, they dress like they're in the 1600s still, right?
Yeah.
So
okay,
you know, but most of them do. There's a lot of them in New York City, and in LA. And so, you know, they're sort of like the Jewish version of the Amish, very hardcore fundamentalists. And he went so far that he thought, well, the only way that we can bring back the Messiah is because it's in the scripture, it's written that when everything gets so evil in the world, the Messiah will come back. So he says, we have to make everything so evil that the Messiah will come back. And so that's who the Sabbateans are. And they believe that's what they are. They think that they're helping the Messiah to come back.
Wow. Well, thank you for that explanation, man. I didn't think I like a Sabbatean Kabbalist because I just don't like the sound of that. Now I really hate them.
Well, apparently, and then they went into hiding, you know, during the Ottoman Empire. Well, and that's actually where this guy ended up.
Well, speaking of hate, man, I mean, I think Trump's pulling like $200 million we've been giving to the Palestinians. But hey, man, now they can hate us for free.
But there you go.
So I'm thinking that kind of works out.
Well, you know, I don't know how much the Palestinians hate us. I think it's more the state of Israel problem, which is just almost, oh gosh, I mean, that's the third rail. That's, I think, one thing I won't even talk about. And you know what? I've even stopped. Here's self-censorship. Okay. I've stopped even thinking about Israel. I don't even think about Israel. Because if I think or talk about Israel, I will be ended. So I can't. I can talk about anything else.
So how's Israel's economy doing?
I don't know.
Okay. Hey, what about What about moving the capital?
There are great people in Israel. There's lovely human beings in Israel. They're fine.
Things are gay in Tel Aviv, though.
What's that?
Things are pretty gay in Tel Aviv.
Are they? I have no idea. I really don't.
Okay. United States moved the capital to Jerusalem.
That I know.
They moved the embassy to Jerusalem.
Too much about that.
So we don't want. So we don't want to talk about Israel.
I just, you know what? I literally, it's like I have been electrocuted so many times by whenever I said anything that I've been trained. Like I've been brainwashed into
Yeah,
not
kind
even
of like a
thinking.
dog, like a dog collar on that. Zzz.
Yeah, dog collar.
Okay, yeah. So we don't want to talk about the Mossad then.
No,
Don't want to talk
never.
about them. Okay.
No, we can't. We can sometimes, like their involvement probably with the Las Vegas massacre.
Mm-hmm.
You know, or but in Mossad. That's you're not talking about the state of Israel when you're talking about the Mossad.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're talking about probably the most hardcore, amazing intelligence agency on the planet.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, Alexandra, Bruce, we're right near the end of the broadcast. Go ahead and say anything you want about the website and what people can find there.
Well, it's at forbiddenknowledgetv.net. You can sign up right under the screen, your first name and your email address. I don't spy anyone. And you get a free... It's like the finger on the pulse of the internet, basically, and especially it's turned really into coverage of the alt